All right, thank you for your indulgence. So we have two spectacular powerhouse romance authors here, and I will not take up too much of your time because no one wants to hear from me. We have #1 New York Times bestselling author and spicy book talk fave, Tessa Bailey. The Michaelangelo of dirty talk. Her new book, of course, is Fangirl Down. We also have a very special guest here with us, the screenwriter behind 2 upcoming Emily Henry adaptations, Beach Read and People We Meet on Vacation, and a novelist celebrating her debut, How to End a Love Story. That is, of course, Yulin Kuang. Now, I'll be describing your host in just a moment. The only thing I wanted to say is just to put in your mind once again that following the conversation over to my left, there will be an opportunity for all of you to ask questions. So please start to think of those as the evening goes along. When it comes time for questions, I will run around with this microphone to make sure you're audible. And then at the end of the event, as we escort the authors out of the space to the signing table, we'll ask that you remain in place for just a few moments and put up with my signing procedure announcements one final time. Often described as one of the loudest booksellers at McNally Robinson, host Sabrina Simmonds can often be found screaming about the next best book. When she's not hand-selling books, she's tackling her next craft project or rewatching her favorite Studio Ghibli films. Please join me in welcoming, on my left, Sabrina Simmonds.
Yeah, they're like animated movies that are phenomenal. You've never seen them?
I mean, I don't, maybe I didn't know
like
what it
My
was.
Neighbor Totoro, or like Spirited Away.
Howl's Moving Castle. Okay, they're on Netflix. Well, they're on Canadian Netflix. I don't know about US.
Ariel.
Yeah, I mean, it was really good. Disney for a bit, like, took their own like dubbing of them, so they were on the Family Channel when I was a kid. So that was great.
Is this improv?
This is not how I anticipated.
Yeah, that's how we're being.
We're actually just talking about Studio Ghibli tonight, so thank you for joining
Surprise.
us. I did want to start off by saying thank you for coming here. This is insane. Having 2 brilliant authors here talking about romance, I feel like it's never been done here before. And I've worked here a really long time. So thank you also to all of you for coming here. This is fantastic. It is so good to see so many faces here, sharing the love of these 2 great books. So I think I want to start off by asking you kind of where did these love stories like originate?
Okay. So I wrote How to End a Love Story at a time when everything else I was working on was adaptation. So I was doing People We Meet on Vacation at the time. I had been tapped for Beach Read. I was also doing like a 27 Dresses reboot that died. And also I just needed on the record, I was pitching on a cutting edge reboot that would have been great, guys, but they didn't pick me. I went too weird. It's fine. I don't think about it all the time at all. And so I wanted to write myself an original feature to direct, but it was like October and National Novel Writing Month, November, was around the corner and in the air. And so I decided to write a novel because I kind of wanted to see what kind of story I would tell if I didn't have to ask anybody else for permission to tell it first. And I knew I wanted to do something that would require 0 research because I was very busy. And so I chose adaptation as the kind of world of it.
Did you write it during November?
Yes, I did.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Did you finish it?
Yeah, it was
Wow.
5 a.m. to 10 a.m. I would work on the novel, then 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. I would switch over to People We Meet on Vacation, and then 5 p.m. to like 10 p.m. or midnight, I would keep going on the novel, and then except on weekends when I would just write the entire time on the novel. And by the end of it, I had like 65 to 70,000 words, which was like, they were not good, and it took me the next about 2.5 years to edit, but that was it. I was in a fugue state.
Amazing. I was gonna say, when did you schedule in the drinking?
Yeah, at the end. Also, one chapter I wrote on an edible.
A camping chapter?
No, actually.
Oh, okay.
So I started watching I started watching this show called Full Swing on Netflix. This was kind of around the same time that I started realizing, like, so I was watching my husband watch golf, and I was like, these golfers are they're like good looking, like they're muscular, and they're like millionaires, and they're like, you know, they have like a human interest story behind each one of them, and I just kind of like started getting into it a little bit more, and then I like, the more I thought about it, the caddy golfer relationship is so fascinating. There's nothing like it in any other sport, where you have these two people like working so closely together, consulting on everything. And in Fangirl Down's case, you have a woman giving a man advice, and then he takes it. So I really wanted to explore that sort of cracky notion. And I kind of just trusted my gut, because I knew golf wasn't going to be like a huge, like super interest in romance. So I just kind of had this vision and had to just believe in it and write it. And I'm glad I did.
I feel like I learned a lot, actually, from both of your novels, because I'm not a screenwriter, and I've never golfed before in my life. So every page I was like, this could be wrong, or it could be absolute fact. I have no way of knowing.
That worked to my advantage.
Yeah. How much research did you have to do? So you mentioned
None.
No, I did end up doing a lot more research more on the mental health issues that I covered within the book. I worked with a sensitivity reader. Her name is Anna Akana, and she's done a lot of mental health advocacy in this space. So that was the research that kind of came later when I had more time. During the drafting of it, though, I was pouring, like, this was a little bit my diary during the adaptation process.
You can say you did like over a decade of research, because it's your job, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
it's all been leading up to
you should
this.
just say that.
Yeah. It's all been a business expense.
I did a ton of research for this because I didn't know the technical aspects of golf. I just knew the butts. So I read one book called Who's Your Caddy? And I read one called Zen Golf, which is about like the kind of like mental aspect of golf. It might not be fascinating to everybody, but it fascinated me that you could be the greatest golfer in the world, but then like a switch can go off in your brain, and you just lose it. You lose your game completely. And that fascinated me. I wanted that to be like part of Wells's journey. So yeah, I read those two books. I put a ton of golf into it, and my editor sent it back and said, take out 90% of the golf, please. This is where we ended up. She was probably right.
So Josephine and Wells end up getting pretty good. They get a sponsorship.
Mm-hmm.
If either of you could be sponsored by any brand, what brand would you want to be sponsored by?
Peanut butter.
Oh, that's a good one.
I'm so ready. I'm oh gosh.
Peanut butter's not a brand, though. I have to think of a real one.
You could do so many things with
No,
peanut butter
okay.
too.
Pilot V5 RT pens. I love those pens. That's my favorite pen. I use it. If I don't have one on me, I get very sad, because it's the pen I use to journal. And I can't journal without that pen. So the Pilot, call me.
Well, it is being live streamed, so maybe they'll see it and they'll tell us all about it.
Peanut butter, call me.
There's so many brand options there. Circling back.
Full on tree in here.
Yeah, that's what I said.
How did it get in here?
You know, I know that they built the one going up the stairs around the tree.
Oh,
But
That's a real tree right there?
well, it's real in the sense that it was once alive. And it's real bark if you touch it.
Okay.
Circling back to your
I'm like, that's chilly.
fantastic book. It was very fascinating to get both females and females' perspective in each of them. Grant and Wells were quite entertaining. Which perspective was harder to write for?
For me, it was Helen, because Helen's, I would say, So my book is about a screenwriter and a novelist who find themselves in the same writer's room 13 years after this very tragic event that unites them. And it was harder for me to get into Helen the novelist's perspective because one, I hadn't written a book yet. So as I was writing it, I was like, yeah, that's probably. And also I think I was kind of giving her a lot of the traits that I felt like I had around age 22 that I was trying to kind of grow away from, because at that point in time, I could have gone to publishing or I could have gone to Hollywood. And I had interned at like this place in New York. And I could kind of see that path clearly enough that I could visualize what that might have been. And so I gave her this kind of dark mirror version of myself. And so that was probably harder to write because it wasn't as fun of a headspace as like Grant, who's just like a cool screenwriter. Like this is totally sexy screenwriter propaganda.
Yeah, I would say, I don't know if Josephine's was harder to write. It was just like it felt more emotional, I guess, writing her point of view. Because I made her a type 1 diabetic like my daughter, and I guess I'm type 1. So it was like, I'd kind of been wanting to write a type 1 character for a really long time. And like, once I met Josephine, I was like, oh, I think this is her, you know, like I just kind of knew. And so it was like trying to get into the head of someone that I think maybe thinks similar to my daughter, about me, about everything. So it was just like, it kind of felt like every time I was in one of her chapters that I was like realizing something maybe that I hadn't thought of before, about, not necessarily about my daughter, just anybody who has the condition. So yeah, I would say Josephine's was probably just more of like climbing a mountain every time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like Josephine was just like so hard, like driven too for like everything she was doing. So it was just like really like not refreshing to see, but it was like lovely to see on screen and not on screen, on page.
Maybe someday.
Both Helen and Josephine had such passion and like, well, passion projects, with Josephine and her pro shop and golf, and Helen with her best-selling YA series. When you like craft a character to have that kind of deeply rooted passion, do you have to kind of plan it out a lot more because there's this like passion element to their character? So does Helen, like, do you know the story that Helen has written? Or
I did know the story she had written. I was kind of pulling a bunch of references of books I had loved. So I was thinking of like The Basic Eight by Daniel Handler meets, I think it was like The Disreputable History of Frankie Landau Banks meets the Gossip Girl series when I was thinking of that. So I guess that was the extent of the world building for me, was kind of thinking about what she would be thinking about. But it was very much a meta romance. So I think that was a very comfortable territory for me.
Yeah, I kind of think like I've wanted something, we've all wanted something so badly in our lives. And I think when it comes to writing a heroine who's driven towards something, I can just apply almost to anything. Like in Josephine's case, it was this pro shop that had been like her grandfather's and passed down to her parents, and now she was running it. And I guess I could, like, my father had a construction company that he passed on to my brother. And like, so it was kind of easy to know what that feels like to have this sort of like generational ownership of something and how important that can be when it lands on you to keep it alive. So yeah, that actually didn't require a lot of research because I had some of that in my head. Yeah.
And so Helen, she mentions in How to End a Love Story that she doesn't curate her playlists. And I felt really connected with that because I'm the worst at curating a playlist, and I always find someone else's. When you are sitting down to write a project or work on a screenplay, do you have to curate the playlist to the vibes you're about to kind of punch out?
Yeah, I have a different playlist for every project. That's kind of how I switch mindsets. So I have a playlist for this project. I have a playlist for Beach Read. I had a playlist for People We Meet on Vacation, but then once our director came on board, he had his own playlist. So when I was doing revisions, I used his playlist because I wanted it to be his vibe. So yeah, I definitely use playlists, but I do identify with her feeling like she's not a music person or like cool enough to know music. So for a really long time, my music discovery process was the same as hers, which was like looking up a very specific vibe, like moving into my new apartment on Spotify to see what else is everybody else listening to here.
I like have to listen, I have to write in complete silence.
Okay.
Yeah, I like my cat purring is the only thing I can hear really. But I do find it weird that like, does this happen to you? Like when you're working on something, like the perfect song finds you somehow, that like fits the thing you're writing almost exactly every time.
Lizzie McAlpine's entire 5 Seconds Flat album, when I listened to it, I was like, oh my God, add.
Like it found you.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so weird. Like when I was, and like I have this weird thing, I've never said this out loud before, it might sound so crazy, but I like, so like the song Sedona by Houndsmouth is a song that found me when I was writing Romancing the Clarksons. And like when I would go for these walks and I would picture all of them like dancing in a pub with me to that song. And it would put me in the mood. It's like, it would like make me really emotional. I don't know if that's like that's my happy place is dancing in a pub. And like Unbelievers by Vampire Weekend is a song that found me when I was writing the Bellinger Sisters. And again, I would picture myself dancing with them to that song. And it would like put me into this headspace of like, these are my friends, these are my people, this is like my characters in my world. And it's weird how those songs just like, I'll hear the song right now and it'll bring me right back to the headspace that I was in when I wrote those books.
Wait, I have a follow-up question. So you don't write to the music, but you associate the music with
Yeah,
oh. It's
like it finds me when it's like, when I'm writing it, and then I will listen to it continually, but not while I'm writing. But like,
that's fascinating.
If I'm walking or driving or whatever it is, yeah.
Do you usually end up then like curating them together like after the fact?
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's impressive.
I'll make a Spotify playlist and disseminate it somehow. Yeah.
That's interesting considering like Hook, Line, and Sinker and her.
Yeah. Well,
like,
so I wrote that. So Hook, Line, and Sinker, my husband got really sick. I don't know if everybody knows that or not, but he got COVID like during this like November of 2020. And didn't come home for 3 months. He was on like a ventilator for 3 months. Like should not be alive. He's fine, by the way. Everybody like take a breath. He's good. But he listens to vinyls. Like he's like a classic rock vinyl junkie. And I was writing that song while he was like sick. And I was just thinking of all the songs that we've listened to together over the years and all the songs that he loves, and they all ended up in the book. So that's where that came from.
Wow.
Yeah.
Speaking of writing, when did you guys start? Was it like something that was kind of always a passion of yours, or?
So I was always drawn to storytelling. My mom has a story about me reading The Very Hungry Caterpillar to my preschool classmates, but I couldn't read at the time, so I just made up the words. But my true beginnings, I would have to say, I wrote a lot of Lily James Marauders era Harry Potter fan fiction. And when we talk about when we talk about Harry Potter now, there's a pretty big disclaimer we have to make about the author, right? Like I don't want to give somebody that bigoted any more runtime, but the beautiful thing about fandom is it belongs to the fans. And so back to me, fan fiction. I wrote a lot of this. I was part of the generation that was growing up alongside the characters as the books were coming out. There was this really big gap between books 4 and book 5, which is when I got into it. And then when book 6 came out, I wasn't satisfied with how she did Harry and Ginny in the canon. So I made this deal with myself that if I could get my Harry Ginny one-shots on the top 10 list of this live journaling community at the end of the year, then I would have a career for myself as a professional writer. And I did, and I do.
It all circles back to fan fiction, really does.
I still don't know what she's talking about. Next 3 I'm talking about. I'm like, I have to like figure it out. Like you have to like lay it out for me, map it out. Okay, I know who Ginny though is now.
What we've been talking about, I have a friend who has a theory that like fandom is a gene that you either have or you don't. And my dad describes it as you can either like, your neural pathways either have a gate or they don't. He definitely has it. And so, you know, I feel like
I don't.
you don't,
Yeah,
you don't
have the
hyperfixate.
I
try to
don't.
find
Only on
fascinating.
peanut butter. So weird. And trees.
You don't fangirl about anything?
I mean, I do, but I feel like it's like not, it doesn't go on and on.
Okay.
Like it's like, I burn bright and then I burn out. Is that like, yeah.
So you're not writing fan fiction on the side?
Well, I have written fan fiction before.
Oh.
Yeah, for JJ Watt of the Houston Texans. Has anybody read it? So weird. Yeah, I wrote JJ Watt fan fiction, and I wrote David Gandy, the British supermodel. I wrote fan fiction for him. So yeah, so maybe I am. Maybe I do have a gene.
It's like
a little
it's
weirder.
down there. It's there. It exists.
To access it.
Yeah, so like my writing journey, I guess, well, I started writing poetry on the roof of my house really dramatically when I was like 10.
You're setting the scene.
Mm-hmm. But I didn't think I could really like write a book. I didn't think that was something, I've never been like very good in school. I've never been like considered academic, smart. So I kind of like, I just thought I would leave that to the smarter people. So after I had a baby and I was home, and I'd been home for a year without any kind of like creative outlet, I just felt something happening inside of me of like, I have something to give here. There's something inside of me I want to let out. And I have been making up stories in my head since I can remember. And I kind of thought that was normal, to sit and spend like hours a day just staring off into the distance and kind of like crafting chapter after chapter. It could go on for months sometimes, crafting a story. And I thought like, maybe I'm just gonna put it on paper, and I did. And that was Protecting What's His, my first book in, I think it's 2013.
Wow.
Yeah, and I got lucky. The editor from the publisher that I sent it to, she just happened to pick it up out of the slush pile one day walking out of the office. Like, yeah, like her intern had happened to print it out and leave it in her pile of slush.
You should read this.
Yeah, like maybe read this one. And I don't think it could have just gotten thrown out just as easily. So part luck, part guts, I guess.
Thinking about writing and how amazing both books are, I've read them both. I don't know if everyone in the crowd has. So if you could describe one of your favorite scenes from each book in 3 to 4 words, what words would you use?
Wait, from our own book?
From each of your own books.
Okay.
Not from each other's. Favorite scene.
Shower? Just gonna keep going with it. Confusion? Interest? Hole.
Mine, is it 3 words or 4?
3 to 4.
Okay.
What pulls?
Yearbook, scrunchie,
Oh.
fuck.
That counts.
That counts. That's in there.
Yeah.
Read to find out if you haven't read it. Do you have a favorite character that you've written?
So this is my debut novel. So
Yes.
I feel like I mean, I love both of them. I do really love Helen because I think she speaks to the part of me that always wants to seem like I'm winning. And we've talked about this, we are both Enneagram type 3s, which is the achiever. I want to seem like I'm winning so bad. And I also want to seem like I'm fine so bad. I think I kind of wrote her for all the overachievers on a healing journey. But I think specifically it was kind of geared towards like eldest daughters of immigrant parents, because I know that particular niche very well. And so I have a lot of love in my heart for her, even though I think she can come across as perhaps prickly. at times. But I do also have this other day job working in the Emily Henry cinematic universe. And so I'll tell you my other character I love writing is Augustus Everett. And that's because I have this theory that like an Emily Henry hero is a Yulin Kuang heroine. Like I spend a lot of my time thinking about this woman's work. And there is something I feel more aligned with her heroes generally, where they have this more like cat-like energy, whereas her heroines are like more warm and sunshine.
Would you say she's your favorite writer?
Emily Henry?
Yeah.
I mean, she is one of my favorite writers, but it is hard to disentangle that because I never got a chance to discover her organically.
Oh, okay.
Her work was sent to me from the start as like and so we call it like we're in a marriage of convenience paired up by our industries. And then the really lovely part of getting to work with Emily has been getting to know like the voice of the author behind the work that everybody loves so much. So I would say she's in my thoughts and I'm hers.
I'm just so excited about hearing about all of it. All of that. Are you guys? So, like, keep talking about it. My favorite character that I've written. I've written a lot of characters, and I feel like I have top 5 lists, a lot of top 5 lists. But I'll say of recent books, August Cates from Unfortunately Yours, and Hannah Bellinger from Hook, Line, and Sinker. Yeah, I'd say those are my 2 favorites. August, because I love just like a big, just like brash bro, like who's just like, yeah, but I totally respect you. You know, I love a guy like that, like a golden retriever who's just like confused 90% of the time by the female's behavior. That's why I write romance, is I just want to confuse men. That's like, I'm in it for the confusion and the suffering of the men.
Has it worked out?
Yeah, what?
Has it worked?
Uh-huh. Oh, yeah. I'm still here. And Hannah, like, I don't know, there was something about her kind of like always feeling like the supporting character, and like, not really sure what she's supposed to be doing. She just knows she just has to lift everybody else up. That I really related to that, and also just this way of her not being able to express emotions about things in real life, you know, like maybe something in the family or what, but like a song can just make her sob. And I have that, you know, and people find, and people sometimes incorrectly think I'm cold, my mom. And it's really just that I have to like find a conduit to like let it out, you know, like some sort of artistic conduit. I can't just like cry about something in real life. I have to like let it happen through something else. That makes sense. You guys have that? Does everybody else have that? Anybody else have that? Yeah, I see some nods. Yeah. Kindred spirits.
Although all of your characters are great, do you have one that you dislike that has made it onto a page? Or maybe not.
Well, I have a secondary. Well, so has anybody read the Hot and Hammered series that takes place in Fort Jefferson? So you know, like Stephen and Kristen, the background character, they're like the Georgie's brother, her older brother, and his like wild wife that like just tries to wreck his head all the time. I hate them. And that was the point. I mean, like, I just think I'm writing a family, and you know, there's always people in your family who are just like, you kind of just want to kick them out, right? But they help stir up the drama, and at the end of the day, they love you and you love them, but you just want to kill them. And I get emails every once in a while, people being like, did I miss Stephen and Kristen's book? And I'll be like, no, that's the point. But they're never gonna get one.
It was hard to write the parents, I would
Yeah.
say, in mine, because I was like, they're not my parents. There is a separation of truth and fiction there, but I did find myself writing around the mother a lot, where it was just like, ooh, what are we putting in here? And so eventually I started careening in towards that, and like, because I don't know, I always feel like picking at emotional scabs is a fun part of doing art, and I call it the emotional cutting that we do to make a blood sacrifice to make the art personal and good. And so I would say that was the most difficult character to write, was probably the mother, because I was just unpacking a lot there.
So Helen goes on a writing trip with her coworkers as a team bonding experience. What, if you could go on a team bonding experience, where would it be and who are you bringing with?
Winnipeg, Canada with Tessa Bailey.
Same.
Okay.
I mean, like, we have to say something else though.
Yeah.
We're not
I'll
buying it.
accept the answer.
Where would I actually go? Okay, let's go to Isle of Skye in Scotland. We're gonna go on a hike up to the Old Man of Store, and we're gonna touch the giant rock. Then we're gonna hike back down the mountain, and we're gonna go to a place where we already have a reservation, because I once was there with no dinner reservations and I didn't get to eat anything for like a very long time, until like 9:30 p.m. And so yeah, that's where I'm
9:30.
I mean, it felt very late at the time because we had done the hike. It's a very grueling hike. You have to go from like the parking lot to the beginning of the gate, and it's a whole thing. Anyway,
You were already hungry too by
Yeah.
the time you got back.
when
down.
I am hungry, I turn into a monster.
It's a hangry. Yeah.
I want to be like on a moody, like New England beach, and like a house, like looking out at like a storm, like the lighthouse going, just flashing on the water. I don't like anything outdoors. I just want to be inside. So I'm not hiking anywhere. you can bring your team. But I want to be inside, like snuggled up with a blanket and fire and hot drinks. Yeah, that's my team building.
Okay. We do see a lot of travel in both of your books. I feel like the characters experience a lot of passport getting, traveling. If you could go somewhere else on this tour, where would you want to go? You could say here again if you want, but
I would love to go to Vancouver, because
Yeah.
I shot a Netflix show, 2 episodes of a Netflix series that later got canceled, but it was called The Healing Powers of Dude, and I was in Vancouver for like 3 weeks, and it was beautiful there, and I was like, I would love to go to Vancouver. I don't know. It's the sun sets very late, and the trees are very beautiful.
you can set a book there and then you can do your research and it'll all be worth it.
So are you asking specifically about Canada?
No,
Or
it could be anywhere.
Okay.
No, it was
Pandering.
Have you loved your Canadian tour so far?
Yes. No, I that's why I'm back. I was only here in February. I mean, not Winnipeg specifically, but February was my first time doing any book tour related stuff in Canada, and I was just like overwhelmed by how friendly and welcoming everybody is here. And so when they asked me to come back, I was like, yes, absolutely. Like it's fabulous. But I would like to go somewhere else. Nice segue. No, I was gonna say, because I was gonna say I want to go back to Westport. I did a book signing in Westport, Washington, where the Bellinger Sisters series is set, and I felt like I belong. I don't know, like I felt like I knew exactly where like everything looked familiar, even though I'd never been there. Just from having researched the book and like spending so much time inside of it in my head, that like when I got there, like the shopping cart supermarket was right there that I wrote into the book, and the streets looked exactly how I pictured them, and I've just wanted to go back ever since.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Also Hawaii.
We have a little, we don't have a port town, but we have Gimli.
That joke killed with the local crowd.
Wow, time to put my history to good use. It was a Icelandic settlement. Yeah, okay. We have a giant Viking statue there, and
Is it hot?
yeah,
She said definitively yes.
yeah. He's pretty tall, very big.
Those are 2 for 2.
Yeah.
Big and tall.
There's a lot of fish shops, so it could be good. Do you like fish? Yeah. Well, you can come back on your next book tour and come to Gimli instead of here.
Here in Gimli.
Yeah. Speaking of, writing, do you have what's next for you?
For me,
For both of you, the girl from Indigo earlier, she works at Indigo. We stopped at earlier. She's a traitor. Get her. Just teach you secrets. What was the question?
What was my? Oh, what's next?
Oh yeah.
So for me, I'm mostly focused on the Beach Read adaptation at this point. So I've delivered, I believe, the last draft on People for me. I think it's in our director, Brett Haley's very capable hands now. Beach Read, which I'm writing and directing, I delivered like the last the previous draft to the studio last Tuesday, like at 4:30 p.m. right before my book launch. So I'm kind of like waiting on notes on that one. And then I have like an indie feature that I'm kind of trying to get off the ground, and then eventually a book too, which changes every time I talk about it. So I shan't. Okay.
So I'm like, I don't know what I was looking at. That's gonna be like 8 books, that series, I think. So that's what I'm gonna be working on for the foreseeable future. It was only supposed to be Fangirl Down and The Au Pair Affair, which comes out in July. But then I met the hockey team. And then the hockey team started a crosstown rivalry with the baseball team. And they like had like a playground showdown. Like, yes, grown men, professional athletes, like had this feud running in Boston. And so like I have this like abundance of interesting characters now that I just like can't leave. So I asked them, I was like, can I just keep going with this as long as it feels good? And so I'm like working on book 4 right now. So we have The Au Pair Affair, and then in January, a book called Dream Girl Drama, which is the 3rd book in the Big Shot series. And it's about 2 people that meet. They have this amazing connection. They share this wonderful kiss, and then they show up at the same engagement dinner and realize their parents are getting married. So, yeah, I love that reaction. So that's coming in January.
While you're writing, do you ever think about like kind of the tropes of romance? And do you have like a favorite trope you'd want to explore or write on?
So at the start of it, I do this thing where I list out all my mid-level tropes, so like things on a lizard brain level that I love, which I'm not sure are necessarily the tropes that we use in pitching things, but so I look at that almost like if I'm cooking a romance, this is my spice cabinet that I'm pulling, and it's like maybe I need a dash more forced proximity, maybe I need a little bit more we mustn't over here, and so it's those are the ones I'm kind of working with, but I do love some we mustn't and forced proximity and
We mustn't. It's like, I don't necessarily think of the tropes in advance. I just, that every story I write, it falls into a category. Every story falls into a trope category. So I tend to back into it. I'm like, oh, like that's the trope I'm writing. And then I make sure that I kind of deliver on things people want to see out of that trope, you know? Like the fake dating, like there has to be like the kind of like a public kiss. Like there's just certain things that like kind of belong in each trope that you kind of want to give people. So I do back into it, though I don't necessarily go into it kind of knowing exactly which tropes I'm going to have throughout the series.
Has there been one that has been your favorite trope to explore?
I really love enemies to lovers, but like only if he's like been in love with her the whole time. Secretly. I can't have him actually hate her at any point, I think, because in romance, like part of the fantasy for me is that there's absolutely nothing this woman could do that he wouldn't love her. So that's kind of why I can't have him hate her at any point. She can hate him, I don't care, but can't be the other way around.
When you begin drafting a story and when you're drafting plots for screenwriting, do you think of the characters first, or do you think of the actual, like, what is going to take place?
I think of the characters first. So I do this thing where we talk about the Enneagram briefly. It's basically all personality typing tests. Humans are complex and we're more than this, but also I'm always like, I see a categorization. I'm like, ooh, tell me. And so the Enneagram is this test that I use for all of my character bases because it tells you what a character is like when they're healthy versus when they're unhealthy. And so that helps me when they're in their normal world versus when they're in their dark night of the soul. So I have this creepy little notes doc that's like Enneagram friends, where I write down what all of my friends' Enneagram types are. And then at the start of a project, I'll assign an Enneagram type to each character and and then I'll build the plot and I'll look at how they react to that plot based off of how I think like my friend Whitney would react to being in this situation. And then in terms of the actual structure, for TV pilots, I use Dan Harmon's story circle structure. And then for features, I use Blake Snyder's Save the Cat story structure. And for the book, I used the Save the Cat story structure, but then I found very quickly about 20% in, I completely abandoned it and just kind of started writing towards whatever was interesting me.
Okay. You both keep mentioning this test, and I feel like I have to take it when I get home.
Does anybody know what it is? Like who has it? Yeah.
What's your type?
3.
I knew it. Yeah, she's
Right
in
in
the
the front
front.
row.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There were a couple other hands. You can all shout out your numbers now.
Any of the 3s? Any of the 3s?
2.
2.
Grand Shepherd's a 2.
4. Any 7s? We wouldn't get along.
Any 9s?
No?
You wouldn't know. Think about 9.
That's the thing about 9s. Again, I forgot the
Character or story first?
I'm a character, like definitely characters. I think it's always since day one been about the characters' like emotional journeys as opposed to like any kind of like outside interference. I mean, that does happen, that does take place, but it's really about them having some sort of trauma or hang up or thing in their past they have to overcome, and that's the journey. It's like the 2 journeys taking place simultaneously. So definitely character driven, yeah.
I feel like when I read a more character-driven story sometimes. I like resonated with more. I did see John pop around, so I'm gonna ask my final question before we turn to the crowd. I am a bookseller, and so I love, sorry, you didn't see him, I saw him.
I did see him,
Oh,
and
okay.
now I'm like, where did he go?
Yeah, like,
Did he pop outside? Did he climb the tree?
So did he climb the tree or?
He's hiding behind the pot. Anyway, bookseller, I love books. What are you currently reading?
So I'm currently reading a book that doesn't come out until June.
Oh.
I know, but it's really good. It's called I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. I've been calling it a rom-com for nosy people because it's about a woman who gets into trouble with HR at work, and so they put a thing on her computer, but accidentally they give her access to all her coworkers' emails, and she reads them all, obviously. And so a book that is out that I can recommend is, in a similar vein perhaps, is Alan Rickman's published diaries, Madly Deeply, which I find very compelling. I'm a very nosy person. If I could read your diaries, I would.
Wait, so, okay, if you got access, I want to see a show of hands. If you got access to all of your coworkers' emails, raise your hand if you would read them. Raise your hand if you would delete them and pretend like you never saw it.
You're all such good people.
Well, no, but not because like I'm a good person, only because I just like wouldn't want to know. I wouldn't want to know what people are saying about me.
I would love to know. I would be like, ooh, this is what you think of me, okay.
What I find interesting is more people in Winnipeg than Toronto were like, I would delete.
Yeah.
We're so much nicer than the
You're
people in
obviously
Toronto.
Or you don't want to know.
Oh, yeah, I guess.
What was the question? What are you currently reading? Okay, so I'm halfway through The Other Side of Disappearing by Kate Claiborne. It's really good. She's like, I think, a mutual favorite of ours. It's a woman whose mother disappeared like a decade earlier, and now there's a true crime podcast producer and her hunky assistant who had like descended upon them to like, you know, basically reboot this podcast and like track her mother down and find out where her mother went, because like there's a rumor that he disappeared with this notorious con man. And the hero is just this like big ex-linebacker who's like very protective but like quiet about it. Oh my God, it's so good. The Other Side of Disappearing by Kate Claiborne. Yeah, read anything by her, honestly.
Luck of the Draw by Kate Claiborne is like the one that my book would not exist without. Like it was, so Luck of the Draw, the hero and the heroine meet in kind of an unhinged premise way. The heroine's just won the lottery and she needs to make amends with families that she thinks that she wronged when she was working as a corporate lawyer for a pharmaceutical company. And she shows up on the doorstep of this family and she's like, hey, I would love to help you out. And he's like, go away. But then she faints in his driveway and then he takes her in and then he finds her pulse and then he's like, actually, I could use a fake fiance. And then it's a whole thing.
I need someone to write it down.
Luck
so
of
that
the
after
Draw
this,
by Kate Claiborne.
I'm gonna forget it.
It's so grounded, it's so beautiful, I love it
Like-
so much.
Goldfish brains.
One thing about romance authors is that we will gravitate towards the most bonkers romance
Yes.
and like love it. Like we like the more unhinged the plot is, the better for us.
Yes.
We like it the best.
You know, it makes it good.
Yeah.
I approve. John is going to come around to ask questions.
The Phantom of the McNally Robinson.
So yes, if anybody does have a question, please just put your hand up and I will wander over to you non-threateningly with this microphone.
And first I want to say I'm so happy that you guys are here. It feels really surreal because you're so smart and pretty and it's crazy. Tessa, you mentioned before that for some projects, music tends to find you eventually. And I was wondering for both of you, if you had to pick one song to represent or remind you of these two projects, which one would it be?
So for Fangirl Down, God Only Knows by the Beach Boys, that's sort of where I leave them, the epilogue. So like Josephine only dances to one band and one band only, and he kind of spends the book trying to guess who it is. I just spoiled it for you. And so like I wanted to leave them with that song, sort of like, actually I love to leave my couples dancing at the end in an epilogue. I do, yeah. Like Disorderly Conduct, they're dancing to like, I think, James Brown at the end of that one, and then yeah, I do it a lot.
Yeah.
And Hook, Line, and Sinker, they're dancing to Let's Stay Together by Al Green.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, they are.
I've got good taste.
Yeah.
Essentially.
I associate Orange Juice by Noah Kahan with this book pretty heavily. Oh, great.
She's actually allergic to orange juice, which is ironic.
I
right?
am allergic to orange juice. Yeah, no, that song specifically I think about a lot when I was drafting certain chapters of this book.
Did you get to see him during?
Yes, I
Okay.
did. And Lizzie McAlpine came, she was the surprise guest, and they
Wow.
sang, what's that? It's Call Your Mom.
Yeah.
Which is also a good song. Honestly, that entire album, put it in this book.
I saw Olivia Rodrigo 2 weeks ago.
So
And
jealous.
I was there on his surprise guest night.
Oh my god.
I know, they sang.
You saw that live?
Yeah, they sang 6 seasons together, and I was just like, what's happening? And then it was over, and I was like, that didn't happen.
Did you cry a little?
I cried.
Okay.
I bawled. I was like the oldest person in the pit. And I was just like,
Oh my god, that close. You were in the pit?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
He
yeah.
ran by me when he was here. It was crazy. I have a video if you want to see it after.
Yes, I do.
It's a very poorly filmed one, but you see him with his braids. Next question.
A3.
Hey, threes. As a fellow Enneagram 3, I couldn't hold myself back by asking, what are the Enneagrams you associate with your characters from these books?
Well, so I gave exactly mine and my husband's because again, wanted to do zero research. So Helen is a 3, which means that she is somebody who cares a lot about how the others perceive her. And when she is at her healthiest, that means that she is, somebody who is a cheerleader for everybody else in her life, rooting for them. And when she is at her most unhealthy, she is a paranoid person who is very stressed about how she's perceived and worried that she's failing everyone in her life. But it's fine. And Grant is a 2, which I believe is the helper type. And that is somebody who I believe at his best, he is the type of person who wants to support and encourage everybody else around him and help them be their best selves as well as being his own best self. And then when he's at his worst, he believes he is fundamentally unlovable unless he is useful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's Josephine. Josephine's a 2. I don't know. What do you think Wells Whitaker is? What do you think his Enneagram type is?
Ooh,
I don't know every single one of them on the top of my
I
head.
kind of feel like he could be a 3 at rock bottom at the beginning because he was doing so well, and then when we meet him, he's kind of at a nadir of his career, and so he's like, well, fuck it.
And his way of coping with that is to cut everybody off and isolate, which is probably a 3's.
Except which one is the individualist? Is that like the 4 or the 6?
I think it.
Does anyone know?
Anyway.
Which one is Poppy?
It's a 4.
It's
Four.
4. 4, okay. I kind of feel like he could be the individualist too, as well, because that's the one that thinks they're so different from everybody. They could never belong or be understood by anybody. And when they're at their best, they're kind of like, they bring special insights and they're so unique and different. And when they're at their worst, they're kind of like, I can never be understood. And I can see that informing his self-sabotaging streak.
2 and a 4. There you go.
So you, oh, Jesus, that's loud. So you guys have both, or I know I'm more familiar with Tessa's work, written a lot of different subgenres and tropes. Is there a subgenre of romance or a specific trope that you haven't written yet that you would like to write in the future? Is there anything that really draws you in that you just haven't been able to do?
Yeah. So I've always wanted to write time travel romance. Yeah. So I had like a story in my head that I've had for a really long time, but it's darker than like what I'm quote unquote known for. And so I feel like it's just gonna have to be a time and a place type of thing. Yeah, so you guys wanna hear what it is?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So it's like, starts off, you know, we have these two like young golden people, like golden couple, like he's the quarterback, she's the cheerleader, they're the popular kids in this small town. Everyone loves them and they're like, it's understood they're gonna get married one day. And then one day there's just like this terrible fire and he runs into the building and he doesn't come out, right? And she's just destroyed by this and she kind of like takes herself out of society slowly. She just starts to isolate herself. And she becomes quietly obsessed with the idea of time travel and like creating a way to go back to that day to save him. But while she's coming up with this technology, the golden boy, his sort of like black sheep brother, is the only one in town who continues to check in on her and make sure she's okay. So he keeps, I know, my heart hurts thinking about it, that's why I have to write it. He keeps coming out and checking on her and they like slowly form this bond and they like kind of like start to fall deeper in love, but then she comes up with the technology and it works. So like, right? What does she do? Yeah.
I want to option that right now.
So where do I sign? Who would we cast?
Ooh.
Who would we cast in that? Like golden, like
Robert Pattinson.
talking about him like 10 minutes ago. That's so crazy.
But you have like 8 more of these books to get through. So like, who's gonna be ready in 10 years?
We're like 2.5 years.
Faster writer than me.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, Robert Pattinson. Somebody like.
Well, for
like,
her, you need somebody smarter, right? Like, or like plays like very.
Well, she has to be kind of like the, you know, like the golden girl in the beginning, and then she can kind of like also play with both characters.
Yeah, descend into like mad scientist.
Mad scientist level.
Ooh. Oh, that's so fun.
We'll keep thinking about it. Anybody have an idea?
Margot Robbie.
Yes. Margot Robbie.
Yeah.
Lily Reinhardt. That's a good one. She could definitely do both.
I don't know why, but my brain went to Bridget Mendler because she,
Is this a Canadian thing? Who's this?
well, she was on the Disney Channel,
Oh,
Wizards of Waverly Place.
Wait,
Lemonade
with
Mouth.
Selena Gomez?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah,
that's
wait,
why I
she
thought
is.
about her because she's like done it all.
Okay,
So I
know
feel
you're
like
talking
she could
about.
like descend into madness and become a scientist.
I think you're right.
Yeah.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah. And she's beautiful, so.
She is. Okay, we have to think of the guy too. Anybody have an idea for the guy? Wyatt Russell.
Wyatt Russell, I'm obsessed with. He has such sad eyes. I love him. I'm
The
trying
director of the movie likes it. So.
Yeah.
We got it. We got our
better cast.
Yeah, there we go.
Anyway.
Next question.
And we do have time for 2 more questions, so it'll be you. Does anyone else? I'll go to the very back. So you in the very back. So it better be a good one.
Thank you. Hi. For me, Yulin, I'm actually really interested in your screenwriting and if you've taken any of what you've learned from your screenwriting and put it into your novel writing. And Tessa, have you ever thought of writing in a different media? Have you ever tried to do something like that? That's what I'm interested in.
Yeah, part of the philosophy behind this book was I wanted to direct a movie inside the viewer's mind where I had infinite production budget. Because whenever I'm writing a screenplay, I'm always thinking about like, oh God, what kind of budget could I get? What kind of actors could I get? And it's the relentless drilling into reality from your vision. And so I really was writing with that in mind. What I learned in the process, the editing process, was I don't think about scent like at all in movies, because you can't smell a movie. And so my editor would write things in the margins like, what does it smell like? And so for a month, I gave myself a diary exercise where I was just describing the scents I was experiencing throughout a day. Yeah, I would say I think a lot about blocking. I think a lot about like what a room, like how people are moving through a room and that kind of thing.
I have. I brought, I think this is so embarrassing to admit to her, but I told her yesterday I had bought Screenwriting for Dummies. And she was like, oh. She was really nice about it.
Why that book?
I know,
because it's for dummies.
It's the starting point, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess I definitely have recently expressed to my agent that I would like to try writing a screenplay for one of my specifically for Same Time Next Year. I don't know if everybody read the short story, the hockey story of the green card marriage in it. And nobody read it. I was like, oh. Because if it would have to be like fleshed out quite a bit, and I don't want anybody to flesh out my stories with me. So I was kind of thinking about it, maybe. And now I know all these cool terms from Yulin. So.
More set pieces.
Set pieces, yeah, I know that word. Blocking, things like that.
Okay, can I just also say my cousin and my aunt are here in the audience tonight. They are Winnipeg locals, and they own a Chinese restaurant about 30 minutes away from here. I just wanted to plug, called St. Anne's Chinese. So please go to it at some point.
I think there was one last question.
Yeah, someone just handed me a mic.
Okay. She's prepping.
I'm ready. I've only been thinking about this for 4 weeks. My question is for the Honorable Tessa Bailey. My question is, we got to explore some of Josephine's journey with type 1 diabetes. Thank you for sharing that story about your daughter. I'm wondering if you have plans to, or have already in your extensive catalog, plan on tackling any other chronic illnesses in any of your characters.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I can give any specifics yet, but as I have been promoting Fangirl Down, I've had a lot of people sort of say to me like, you know, this is my chronic illness, and like I would love you to like represent that next, like because they appreciate the way I represented it in type 1 diabetes, and I don't know every illness as well as type 1 diabetes is like a 24-hour-a-day like life. Like I feel like me and my daughter are like working as her pancreas all the time. Like, and I would just want to make sure I did it sensitively and as authentically as I possibly could. So when I do, and I will, I'll make sure that I'm finding the right people to help me. So I will, yes.
So we could talk all night, but I'm really.
I don't even know where's the voice coming from.
So I'm going to turn things over to our panel if they have any closing comments before I offer mine.
I have these bookmarks that my younger sister designed for my book. And so for the first 15 people who ask for them, you can have a bookmark.
They're the best, they're so cool.
They're beautiful. I saw them in the back.
I have nothing else to say.
Okay. Well, I would like to say thank you both for entertaining this evening here. You have both beautiful books, and I can't wait to read more from both of you.
Thank you. Thank you for the wonderful moderating as well. You found like all the common themes in our book and like created questions out of them. Like that was skillful.
That's why I couldn't come into work last week, because I had both books open.
You have an author's note.
I feel like you're an Enneagram 5.
I'll let you know when I take the test.
And thank all of you as well.
Yes, you all. Great audience.
So in just a moment, I'm going to review some incredibly scintillating signing procedure for you. But right now, we are going to loose our panel into the store so they can get situated at the signing table. So I'm going to ask you to just do me one favor. I'm going to offer my gratitude to HarperCollins Canada for helping to make this evening happen. So please do applaud for them. I would like to acknowledge my colleague who may or may not be reading my email, Sabrina Simmonds, for her incredible hosting job. And I'm going to ask you to steel yourself, prepare, and then offer a potentially inappropriately, uproariously raucous round of applause for Yulin Kuang and Tessa Bailey. And I shall now loose them into the care of my colleague Angela, who will escort them to the signing table. And while they're doing that, I'll ask you all just to remain in your place, and I'm just going to quickly review signing procedure for you once more. I'll also ask that nobody trip over the microphones. So, as so many of you have heard on multiple occasions this evening, we will now be moving on to the signing for this evening. So, a colleague of mine will be walking down the line just to make sure that you have copies of any of the books that you want, just to make sure that everybody here does get the books that they want in hand. Feel free to get them signed before you pay for them. Just again, please do pay for the books at some point. We appreciate it. And it allows us to offer more events like this. When it comes to the signing itself, myself and a colleague will be wandering down the line to write your name on a Post-it note to ensure you can spend more time talking rather than spelling when you get there. Please note that there is a 3-book limit just for having your name written inside. So if you do have a pile of books, please do just consider that a little bit and think which ones are the priorities. We do have a lot of Tessa Bailey's back catalog as well. So if you're having trouble finding the title, please just let a bookseller know. And we will try to get those books to you as well, although we are starting to run low. When it comes to pictures, just due to the sheer number of people here, just to make sure that everybody gets their time at the table, we are limiting photos just to candid photos. So please have your camera out and ready to go, because we don't know how to use phones other than pressing that one button that allows us to take a picture. And if you pass that to my colleague Angela, who will just be across from the table, we'll be able to get a picture of you posing dramatically in front of the signing table with both Tessa and Yulin looking up. Other than that, please again, just do visit the cash desk afterward. Thank you all so very much for all of your attention tonight, for your questions, and being completely wonderful. I will ask you to remain parted like the Red Sea, just so I can actually get ahead and get situated. And the moment I arrive at the table, and it is good to go, I will summon you all over. So thank you so much again, and thank you for being here tonight.